you are much more friendly with your fear. And it's if your presence has now gotten bigger than your fear.
Oh, what a good way to say it.
The upper limit gets navigated successfully when we expand and then integrate. When I let go into the flow, the next step in the dance comes out of that.
Hello, my Katie.
Hello, Sophie. What a pleasure to see you. And I was just having the thought, I wonder what's up for you today. What's on your mind, or, what's arising in you?
Oh, I love that. Poof, dropped instantly. You have this capability with just your presence. Like I can't flutter. Like I can't be, I can be joyful and playful and superficial, but you always invite me in a way that I love. What's present is there is a possibility for my work, my life to grow very exponentially, potentially very fast, in a big way. And I was coming to this call a little bit like ready to talk about things, but really what's present is it's not fear, but I'm feeling a little flutter of like, an image I have is like if I had a past life and I spoke up and my head was cut off, or I was burned at a stake somewhere, or something happened to me for truly coming out. And it's been like I had a dream last night about it, and it's in the air. Like there's something about, am I safe if I go out big in the world?
So please tell me more about that.
Well, there's I could tell you more about the what, but I'm more interested in telling you about the why. There's an opportunity to take my work into a bigger arena, the 90 million people arena, some bigger.
That's somewhat bigger, yes.
That's it's a country.
It's several
not even a
countries.
small country. It's a sizable country. And I've had a few times. I remember a conversation with Gay years ago when I was given an opportunity to meet with Oprah, and he had described this like out of the like my comfort zone life is here, and being with Oprah was like out there, and that my ceiling had to grow to encompass this thing. And I feel a little bit at a crossroad like this again. Not the same way, because it's feeling like, this is the right thing. What I do is really helpful and like all the good things. So, and yet it's buzzing. It's like, maybe it is fear. I want to explore with you.
Yeah. I was wondering too about, because it sounds like there's something that really interests you about this. I'm curious about that.
Well, what interests me is finally finding a way to grow my company, my content, whatever, to scale without feeling deluded. It's not feeling like in the past, everything that was ever proposed to me or possible felt like, okay, I have to go outside of the depths of my forest to like bring people in from a much lighter way. And I've always been uninterested in that. But this is offering a possibility where I could be in the forest with the people and be deep and go profoundly with my stuff without needing to make it a half of an inch, depth, so that it doesn't scare people or whatever might have been trippy.
Right. So, it sounds like you're expanding your own capacity to turn fear into presence, but also you're expanding your capacity to welcome other people into an expanded version of themselves, rather than hiding out or hunkering.
Yes. And if I were to drill in that, there is a responsibility, not the heavy side of it, but there is like a place for me in that table that doesn't scare me. That's not
Mm,
like for a long time, I would have this little that'd be like, "What are you doing at that table?" Like I would always end up at giant tables, metaphorically, with you and with
yes.
incredible people, and I would always have this little, "Why am I at that table? Like, what did I do
Mhm.
that made me be welcomed here?" And of course,
It's
leaving.
like your little critic on your
Yes.
shoulder going, "You don't belong here.
That's what
You're
it's saying. It's like by
you're
saying, "Why
making
am I
this up."
here?" There's a
Mhm.
little, I shouldn't be here. There's definitely a saying of I shouldn't be here. And I would love to get to it in a loving, like I'd love to resolve. Like I'd love to give that voice the joyful departure. Like I don't need you anymore.
Well, when that voice comes up, then what happens? What happens after this voice arises?
It's funny because Abby is our producer and she's on our back end of everything we do, you and me, and she's probably smiling right now because she has seen me toy with a big possibility and like I'll find a way to no longer be that interested or not be as committed to it or it's not that valuable. Like I retrieve exactly that gesture you did.
Uh-huh.
I retrieve.
Yes, and it sounds like you get bigger and then you get smaller.
Yeah.
You start to venture out and then you go whoops and
Yeah.
I think you have to go back in. It was reminding me of a snail, or a
Yeah.
sea
Out of the
anemone where
house and then
it's up and
back
then
in.
it's
Yeah.
yes, yeah, and it sounds like what I can hear is that you are much more friendly with your fear.
Mhm.
And it's if your presence has now gotten bigger than your fear.
Oh, what a good way to say it. Yes, because it's not like I didn't have presence before, nor do I expect not to have fear now, but there is almost kind of like the scale is tipped now. And so my presence can say to my fear, I love you. And
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to, I mean, when you describe this like big and small, which, as you know, with my personal story with my weight is already metaphorically really funny. Like, ooh, like how much more metaphoric can we get that it's, or rather, very, very realistically expressed, like big and small,
Very literal. Yeah.
quite literal. But there's also the heartbeat. There's also like the version that feels a little bit more organic and natural is there is a little, okay, I'm in, I'm out. But what I think I've done is I've gone in more than I come back out. And then come back out and then I go back, like it's not, I am coming out more and more. It's not like I'm staying small. I have a very big life, but it's very, it's to this degree, whatever the degree is, but it's the limit, the upper limit
Well,
one.
yes. Well, I think, as we say, that's really the only problem
Yes.
is expanding my capacity to enjoy more of things going well, to enjoy the giving and receiving of more love and energy and attention. And I think it's for all of us, it's very natural to expand out and then like go, oh my God, whoops, like, whoa, too big. Like because what we're doing really is going out into the unknown.
Mhm.
And part of pulling back, I think, for all of us is, well, I know this space, I know my cave,
Mhm.
and I know where all my little things are, like I have things stashed. So
Mhm.
when I get scared or when I need something, I have it all here for me and I don't have to go anywhere.
Mhm.
But if I want to be more present in the world, which sounds like that's been coming through you for a very long time.
Mhm.
And it's what we talk about also as letting your genius
Mhm.
emerge more and more, letting your genius guide you. And, that is what's unique to you
Mhm.
that also makes a contribution in the world, something that you love to do. And so I see it as this dance between love and fear
Mhm.
that you're letting happen, but that you're also letting the presence and your love of what you're wanting to do hold the fear
Mhm.
so that it's more in charge rather than your fears in charge.
So is that what happens? Like, do we learn? Is the growth, is that growth to manage the fear in a way that I can embrace it and that I can embrace it in the love? Is that at some point the, what would be a word to describe this? Like I'm like part of it for me is understanding the structure of this new reality. What if I were to look 10 years ago, I am way beyond what I was imagining I would be 10 years ago. So I know
Right.
there's this capacity to, you know, this thing of like you've been dreaming of having this house and now you're in the house and it's almost like you forget that you wanted the
You
house.
forgot that you dreamt it up and that you didn't have it 10 years ago and now you do.
Exactly. And so I'm aware of that dynamic. I'm aware that sometimes I have done a version of one day I'll be on stage doing something and then I'm doing a TED talk. And then, you know, now I've done that. And so it's like, now I'm like, so do you think life, a successful life or joyful life, do you think has to do with like, okay, but then what is next? Or what is this village growing that I'm part of? Embracing the next thing, embracing the next thing, like is it potentially what the success would be, like there's always this next thing then?
My sense is that the upper limit gets navigated successfully when we expand and then integrate. So what I've noticed is that how most people deal with the upper limit problem is I have this big, and then I contract because that's where I have know how to find my safety. I
Okay.
don't know how to find safety in integrating. But I think a lot of what we're doing in the world and what we're talking about and what we're sharing with others is how to turn toward the unknown, move toward what you really want. And then when the upper limit arises, that you learn how to integrate with slowing down, with breathing, with appreciating, with feeling what's going on in your body, with fear melters, so that all of the things that we share with people are really about expanding and then integrating rather than expanding and then contracting. Because we have these two pulsations. We have fear is a response to protection and a threat. And growth is an expansive mode, and you can't do them at the same time.
Right.
So you're either in growth or you're in protection. And learning new ways to protect that actually allow you to be present. That's a lot of what I've been up to is rather than trying to make your experience different, how can I get large enough to include that experience that I'm having?
I'm curious, when in your recent life, when do you, can you describe to me almost kind of, I want to hear your journey through it, like you would have felt a potential contraction or potential protection or contraction, and you did what you just did visually. If you're not seeing the video, Katie just grew, just grew her the space that she takes. So I'm curious, like, what is the, walk me if you can, like, if you can remember a moment not long ago where maybe you felt that and you chose to switch to an integration, and how did that go?
I would say, I'm not remembering a specific thing currently. I was remembering when I was first on Oprah,
Hmm.
where we went from 10 couples in our living room to 10 million people on Oprah. That was a really, and it took two days later, I came back into my body. So I
Oh,
realized that, yeah, I was so expanded that, 2 days later, I kind of went "Tugunk," back into my body. I could be like, "Oh, that's right, I have a body." And
oh, that's
what I always use when I'm feeling like I'm in some big event, that I'm gonna be at. Oh, we gave a talk at a big summit a couple of months ago. And as we were walking in, I noticed that there was, it was a very large group. It was like, 500 people in this ballroom.
hmm.
And I had just a little of, this is bigger than I thought. And it wasn't a big, like I'm falling off a cliff, but there was a little, this
A
is bigger.
flutter. Hmm?
Yeah, a little flutter. So, and I recognized it was fear. But the practice I think that's been the most valuable for me is what I call loop of awareness. So
Mm,
when I give my attention to me, I can feel my presence. And
mm,
it's almost as if I give myself a hug and
mm.
like, I'm here with you. And that, but I'm also giving my attention out. I'm not just retreating and, going back into the cave. I'm using my attention to go, oh, and here we are. And here's the possibility. And what I've noticed is that connecting with an actual person, giving my attention, like what I would do and what I did when we first got there, was I gave my attention to different people in the audience.
Yeah.
So I would notice me, and then I would notice, and I would actually connect, and I would notice that they would notice, and we
That you
actually
were
connected.
connecting
There
with
was
them.
this
Yeah,
little,
yeah.
little connection, and at each one of those, it was like I was seeing the straps on a hot air balloon. So every time I would do that, I would have more of a connection to,
Oh,
okay, here's the structure. I'm safe here. There's a lot of space, but I also have the structure that allows me to stay safe. And
mm.
so my sense is that, that's the simplest, but the most effective thing for me is to connect in here and then to connect out there.
Mhm.
And then that creates for me the safety of connection rather than the safety of contraction.
I love that. And as you're describing it, I felt a lot in my body. Like I couldn't be doing or thinking about what you're saying without experiencing a certain in and out of sorts. Like
Mhm.
and I was thinking about that a couple of days ago, where I was talking to one of my gorgeous client is the most iconic dancer, I think, of this time, one of them anyway. And we often talk about the body and we often talk about how dancing, which I know is so, you're more in that world than I ever will be. But I remember you speaking to this, like it's always, it starts in the body, like it all
Yeah.
starts in the body. And she and I were talking about this video. My brother was having a hard time about how life is sometimes easy, sometimes not so easy, and how to navigate. And I saw a dance, and I was sharing with her that this dance is this guy is going up the stairs, and then he falls into a trampoline, and the trampoline brings him back to the stairs, and up he goes again. We'll put it on the we'll attach it to this episode.
Yes, that's a wonderful little video.
Oh, I mean, it's a minute, maybe two, and this guy
Yes.
is just gracefully going up the stairs, and it seems to be like life is easier, and then bam, he like disappears into this trampoline, which really bounces him back into what ultimately becomes, going up the stairs. So I sent it to my brother as a way to say, sometimes you are joyfully going up the stairs, and sometimes you trip enough you are in the trampoline for a second, and how no words could have explained it better. Like you visually giving me this thing of like, I feel like I had a little flutter, but then I kind of really like you had that cute face of like what is in the world out there? Like you kind of looked like you were just really connecting. How
Yes.
much more grounded that is for me, that next time if I experience this like wanting to shut down or hide or collapse for a second, that I can just see your cute face, just like and then put it here.
Wonderful.
It's
I'm glad that's
incredible.
an anchor for you.
Oh wow. And even and that dance as well, that if sometimes it feels like it's a collapse in the trampoline, that it is really, so I get my, it's almost like the way he does it, it's like he gets it
Well,
collapses,
it's
but
a
it
it's a rebound. He really lets go into the full.
yes.
So and using the energy of that to then take the next step. And what I get from that is that where I get trouble is when I get rigid.
Yeah.
Whether it's they're wanting to be right or wanting to be in control, of me or anybody else. But when I let go into the flow, the next step in the dance comes out of that. And there is a rebound. There's a rebound in letting go. If I really, like in an out breath, the next in breath comes very naturally out of a really let go out breath. But if
Oh,
I'm not getting the in breath or the out breath, but that we're meant to have that kind of the in breath, the out breath, the striding, the expansion, contraction. That's how our whole body works. Our heart muscles, our
Blood
breathing.
influx, everything, everything.
Yeah, everything works with both the contraction of the muscles and an expansion. And when those dance together, it also then becomes for me a journey of discovery rather than, and the surprise rather than same old.
Yeah.
And I think when we get in our same old patterns, they're familiar, but they don't have much. There's not much liveliness in them.
Right.
They're just very predictable.
Right. The rigid.
They,
There's a
yeah,
rigidity to them.
there is a rigidity.
It's funny. I had a fall last maybe a year ago. I was at a concert, and the fall I took. Lots of people were like, "You could have broken your neck." Like I fell from a pretty high distance, but I was backwards to the fall. So I imagine me going up this thing, and I fell like that, right? A little bit like that trampoline guy.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that I was so like I went down really like 10 like it was a big fall. And my head, by the way, fell this far from concrete. It was grass and then concrete, and I stayed on the grass side. So there was a lot of blessings in the fall. But the reason I had this visual as you were talking is if I had seen that I was gonna catapult by that much, my fear would have gripped my body probably more. But because I
Right.
went back to it and I just basically, it was almost like a trust fall, it was just like, oh, wow,
Mhm.
this is going, and I almost like my body was able to bounce as opposed to crack, as opposed to result in a shocking,
Yeah, I was reminding me of very long time ago, there was a Lipton tea commercial where the the person falls back into a pool, just like,
Okay.
from the refreshment of it, just this falling back into, that. And again, for me, it's a letting go.
Yeah.
I'm letting go into, um life. It seems to
Yeah.
me like into the
Yeah.
flow of life, and life's got me. I'm like
Yeah.
flowing with the river, I'm flowing, because we are mostly water. That's
Yes.
probably why these images are coming up for
Yeah.
me. But your ability to go with,
Yeah.
what, the for us, the be, play, love. For me, this is an aspect of play
Yeah.
that I don't know what's going to happen, but there is a letting go into.
Mhm.
And I part of what I love about interacting with you is that for me, it's always a letting go into. Like, well, what's
I'm
the,
like a fool.
really letting go into the pool, letting go into, and it's also I'm turning toward
Mhm.
what's wanting to happen here, and
Mhm.
and so it makes the journey
Mhm.
itself interesting rather than I have to get here. I have to
Yeah.
accomplish that. Like you have to give your TED talk or you have to have a certain number of clients or customers or likes, to actually feel that you're being successful in life.
Mhm.
For me, it's the experience of being alive.
Mhm.
It gets richer, juicier, more creative, and it's my whole body experience rather than a thing that
Mhm.
I'm pointing to that's going to say that means I'm successful because
Mhm.
I've done that. And because I've worked with so many people who have done that and they feel miserable.
And they're not there. Yeah, there's no there. There's no, I love the way you linked it to, we started, if you remember, for a long time ago, like some 27 minutes ago, but there was definitely a vibration of, I was attempting not to let it be fear, but I was also, obviously it's not completely relaxed. Like I could sense, that there was a certain, almost like I could feel it almost in my, what do you call that thing? Your rib cage. Like it was a little,
Yes.
but as you were describing it, I imagine that all the steps I'm about to take or I'm already taking could have this visual of fall. I mean, did you finish the Lipton tea commercial? Was it just that he falls in the water? Just
He falls into, and it's like this, and I think in the soundtrack you hear this, ah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the refreshment of a glass of tea, but also just the freedom. the freedom of letting go, and that's absolutely delightful. And I think so many of us, we're born with a fear of falling. That's one thing that's wired in. It comes from our ape background, that uh, people are generally born with a fear of falling. And so being able to fall
With no fear.
and with no fear, that's a huge amount of freedom. Like, I can let go into life. Life's going to catch me. Life's going to hold me. Life's going to give me that next rebound. And it's been my experience that when I participate in the dance, life does support and go, okay, here's the next thing. Oh boy, that was fun. Or, whoa, that was a little challenging. I felt myself getting just a little whoa. So let's play a little bit with expanding to this next level of possibility.
I realized I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, which was exactly of that flavor, where she was describing going to an office situation that was going to present a bunch of challenges. And she asked me if I could help her prepare. And I realized that all my questions were allowing her to think of other possibilities. Like, she was describing this woman is after her and wants to, like, hurt her. And it's always been like that for 15 years. And I could see that the more we were talking, the more petite she was getting on the chair. Like, she was, and I was like, I don't know that people think about you as much as you think. Like, I just was like, I don't think she's getting up in the morning thinking, like, how am I going to torture this employee of
Uh,
mine? And it was really cute because I was semi-joking, because I know her to do well when things are a little bit made lighter, and giving her visuals of that. But I could see that giving someone else the bit, like, almost like her fear that the other person was going to come after her, was creating the coming after her. Like, she was almost approaching the situation, like, almost like if I was going in the pool with, like, I'm going to crack my head at the bottom of this pool, like, I wouldn't be jumping very joyfully, if that is
right. And you
what I
may
was
not even go in the pool.
at all. Yes. Yes. And the more we were talking, the more I saw that what was most helpful for her is that I was offering, just like, what if it was about this? So what if she was thinking, what if even you remind her of your mother? And when you're in the room, somehow it triggers something for her that has nothing to do with you. And I could see she was just, as we were talking, there was just this opening, and this, just not as tense. Yes, this breath.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I hear that um, you approached the edges where she felt rigid, and with your presence and also your words, you were just helping to soften the edges.
Yes.
So that she could find her own pathway through that.
Yes, and she sent me a text this morning. She was on the plane on her way, and she spoke to that. She was like, I'm actually going to open the conversation with, like, what I appreciate about her and what has worked this year in the work that we've done together. Like, she was going to bring in such a different, I could see that her bringing this softened version of her, as opposed to this gridlocked version,
Yes,
that she had
right.
when we first started talking. This is all very related. It's like finding. It's funny because I created something last night. Oh, I'm obsessed with concrete right now, as you probably know, and cement, and I'm making things, and I made this incredible. Oh, I want to run and get it for you. Talk
Good.
about.
Yeah, please, please.
I should have had it prepared much. I wanted to show it to you.
Yes, you should have had it prepared, but this is
Good.
so much more fun.
I bought this little frame that you pour. So this is like a plastic, like a rubber, and you pour cement in it. It's not finished. Like, I'm gonna do
Yeah,
pretty.
yeah, yeah.
Look at this little staircase that came out.
Oh, I love it.
So it's a planter. I'm gonna plant a little. There's a hole for the thing. So I'm creating these forms, and I'm pouring concrete. And as I was doing it this morning, I was like, well, last night, and I what do you call it? And I removed the frame. I unframed it this morning, and this thing came out, and I was like, this was powder, and I put water, and I poured it in this thing, and I had a vision. It's like this thing came out of all these little next, and all of a sudden there's this, like,
There's a thing that you created that came out of space.
yes. And to remind us of the conversation we were having with Gay whenever it was, a few episodes ago, but this idea that there's this, like, it came out of space inside of me that somehow translated into space of something that now exists when it didn't exist before. I don't.
I hear you talking through your creative impulse that you're obsessed with concrete. So other people, could be obsessed with a particular word, or
Yes.
obsessed with, like Einstein. We have a picture of Einstein back there, obsessed about a certain question for 27 years. He kept coming back to.
You're talking about Einstein. You're talking about Einstein specifically.
Einstein specifically came, one of the questions that he was wondering about in the cosmology, he wondered about it for 27 years. So the things that we're drawn to, through our own curiosity are soon, however, life is wanting to move through us. And as we respond to that and dance with that and play with that, things get created. We start with nothing, powder and water, and it becomes this form that you can have a plant in, which also has steps, sort of the whole evolution, there's metaphors in it.
Yes.
It's multi-layered. And what it was also, I want to just share with people the steps that we took at the beginning of the conversation. Are things that you can do in your life to keep your own creative conversation going, but also conversations with others. And they were, tell me more.
Yes, you asked me that. Immediately I went into like, what more do I want to say about this? Like, it was very inviting.
Right. And then what interests you most about that?
Yes.
And then that got to some of the nuances of what particularly is unique to you and interests you about that. And then what happens?
Yes.
And so just those three things are in what we call the basic toss. And we can include this, in our notes so that people can see how they might use that to continue the play of going out into the unknown, and then integrating that, and then having the next impulse arise. And to me, that's basically, that's it. That's what that's
it all. It's all here. It's all here.
It's all here. This is it. We've covered it all in this episode. Thank you.
This will be our last episode. Just refer to this one. Right. Yeah. What's beautiful is as one of the things I run into the most with the people I work with is how difficult it is for people to have what they call difficult or conflictual, conversation. But the way, I didn't come at you, it was a conflict, but you can use it because you're like, tell me more. Like, what else is it?
More. Like, someone might come and say, and you go, taking a breath, and tell me more.
Can you imagine the person's going to be like, what? You want me to hear more about? Like, you want me to tell you more? That's incredible.
Exactly. That would be what we really. That's a pattern interrupt for sure.
Yes.
And also an availability to, I'm meeting the unknown with expansion. And even though I might, like, if someone comes at me, for me, I've needed to learn how to do that. I didn't do that automatically because I would go into my own, or my, my own, I know better than you do, my own personas. But I've learned that if I just make that little shift into getting curious, like, tell me more. I've had seen people shift their whole attitude toward life from being received in that open kind of a way.
Well, as we're wrapping up this episode, I really, and we will have more, we were joking, but as we're wrapping up this one, I love that and we will have that in the notes, but I love that those three questions really could be like in your toolbox of like, okay, this moment is feeling a little tense. All right, let me re-enter, let me retake a breath and then invite the other person for more curiosity. It just feels incredibly helpful. That was
It's incredibly helpful because it softens. Mm-hmm. And it makes connection possible, even if you're way, way separated from each other, in point of view or philosophy or politics or,
and
those
that's
divisions.
What happens with the dance we were talking about. When he falls into that thing, it's like he lets himself reinvent almost. And that is what brings the energy back up. So that's a beautiful visual to hold as well.
Yeah, is really there's one more thing about that was coming to me is that because he lets go, he's supported.
Yes.
So even with a trampoline, if you don't go into the trampoline, you don't get support.
You hurt yourself.
Yeah. Yes. You kind of gung. Yeah. So him continually letting go, and then the energy rises up through him and supports him.
Because he's not resisting it, because he's
Yes.
not fighting it. I love that. I love that. Beautiful. I'm going to go do more cement things. That's what I'm doing today. I love
And
you.
you can do more show and tell with us too.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Well, what I'm making is going to be 600 pounds. So unless I take the camera with me, I'm not going to be
Well,
able
take
to
the camera. Yeah.
I will show you some of my stuff. Absolutely. I love you.
Wonderful.